Hey everyone, welcome back in. My name is Matt, Cryptic if you prefer, and we are back this week for the UV process for our fan tutorial. So today we're going to be going through finishing up the UVs, getting it all laid out, and then prepping it for Substance Painter. Keep in mind, I'm going to be doing two videos next week. There's going to be a video for setting up materials in Maya for the fan, as well as setting up materials in Substance Painter. Both should yield a pretty similar result, but I wanted to make sure that if you don't have access to Substance Painter, you are also still going to be able to see this tutorial through to completion. So with that said, if you're not subscribed already, make sure you hit that subscribe button, and let's get started. Okay, so if you remember where we last left off, in the last tutorial, we UV'd this part and these pieces. So we are set to go there. The rest we have to do is going to be kind of the same process going straight forward. And if you are lost or stuck, leave me a comment down below. I'll see if I can help you out. But we're going to start off today with the base. We're going to go ahead and go to Show, Isolate, Select. And remember to access your UV editor, which mine's already pulled up. Go to UV and then UV editor. All right, so right away we can look at this and see that we've got materials stretching all over the place. It's a mess. So what we're going to do is I'm going to just kind of hover above here. And I'm going to go UV. Camera based. That's already a much nicer result, except for this, we've screwed up this pipe area. So the next thing we want to do is start adding our cuts. So I'm thinking what I want to do is I need to have a seam here. So this area right here is going to be a seam. So we'll go to cut. I want to hide my seam in the back of this model. So starting here, we're going to select this edge loop going up the back of it. We're going to go to, once again, cut. And you're going to just kind of repeat this process throughout the entire project here. You can use the G key if you're continuing to work through it. So what we've done there is now that is its own UV shell. So if you go UV shell, you can see now it's separated. This is its own UV shell and this is its own UV shell. So if you select this UV shell, hit W, move it off to the side. If we select these UVs and then go to modify and unfold, it's going to unfold and just flatten out really nicely. So we're just going to scale that guy up. And we'll leave that right there in the corner. What I like to do is after I've cut them off and unfolded them, I will keep them and build out my UV in another plane in UV space, and then I will move them over to the main UV section that I'm actually working on. Okay, so now that we've got that, we have this one right here. So this guy right here, we're going to follow kind of the same concept. We're going to take the center. We're going to cut this guy. And you can do this by doing Shift X as well with your keyboard. And that's going to give us a new UV shell up here. So the next thing we'll do is we'll go UV shell, we'll select our shell, and we'll just move it out of here and get it over here. We want to make sure you're staying kind of organized with what you're doing. That way you can keep track of the things that you're changing and the things that you're actually cutting. So now we need to look back here and find where our seam is. So our seam is right here. We're going to try to follow that same line for this seam. So from here, we're going to select these three. And then in UV, we'll do Shift X. That's going to cut it. And then we'll do the same thing down here with this one. Make sure that you're selecting all of these because it is quadded out. It's going to be a little bit different. Shift X. And then we'll go to UV shell. We'll just move these guys out. So you can kind of see what we're doing here. We're just kind of cutting this apart in pieces. And then as you have new shells, you'll just move them out. And then for here, we'll go select all that and go to modify, unfold. We've got a nice unfold right there. This detail doesn't really matter. So we're going to keep these pretty small. We're just going to kind of we're just going to kind of nuzzle them up here because we're not going to really deal with seeing the inside of that. All right, so that's the top of that. We're good there. So the next thing that we want to look at is this entire bottom piece. So as we're looking at it, we know that our UV shell starts here. The question is how do we want to do this outer edge? So the thought process should be is we want to hide the seam as much as possible. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take down here. I'm going to select this entire edge loop. Just make sure you've got the entire edge loop. I'm going to go back into our UV view and hit Shift X. That should give us a brand new shell. It does. And we're going to try doing an unfold on this and see what the result is. If we like the result, we will keep it. Go modify, unfold, and it's pretty solid. And that's awesome because that means that our UV is now, or our UV seam is now hidden within that lip. So we can keep that there. This piece we're going to maintain at a pretty large size just because we want to actually have the detail present there. But we still want to make sure it fits within our area. So we'll call that good right there. Now the next piece we have to worry about here is the shell, the last shell that we have. So if we look at the shell, this is what we have left. This is a really easy way to kind of work down through your model and figure out what you have left. And looking at this, what I want to do is I want to separate the bottom because I don't really want to deal with it right now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select that edge, go over to my editor, Shift X, and then we're going to go UV shell. And we're going to move this guy over. Now you're going to notice that this one's red. The reason this one's red is because your UVs are currently flipped. So what we want to do is we want to go to modify and flip. That's going to convert your UV back to a usable space. And then we're going to just put this down here. Again, this is on the bottom of the fan. So unless you plan on showing the bottom of the fan, we don't really need the detail there. It's not really necessary. So now we have our last UV shell, which is this guy right here. And you can see it in representation here. What we want to do is find, once again, our cut down the back, which is going to be right here. We're going to go over here. We're going to go to UV shell, and then locate where this guy is. So this guy's up here. So what we're going to do, we're going to select these edges, because that is that portion of that shell. You're going to go cut so, and cut. And then from here, go UV shell, modify, and unfold. So the result that gave us is not exactly what we want. It's still curved. So what we can do here, we're going to go to modify. We're going to straighten the UVs. Make sure when you're in here that your tool is reset. I have mine set to 90. It should be sitting at like 30. We'll hit apply. And that gives us a good starting point. So from here, we get a pretty nice result. What we're going to do is we're just going to manually go in here and kind of adjust this the way we want to. So I'm just going to rotate that, drag it down. We're not going for perfect here. Right now, we just want to get the UVs in kind of a usable unfold. And then what I'll do is I'll just kind of rotate. Oop, we missed a section. So I'll just rotate this guy, drag it, and just kind of finagle it. Until we have a nice straight result. All right, so there we have that. And what we'll do is we're going to go to modify, optimize. So we can kind of tell that's giving us a little bit of a problem. Usually I won't really finagle with these too much. I'll just kind of come through and just fix them. With a piece that's not complicated like this, there's really no sense in just trying to automate it. You can just really go in there and easily drag it. I feel like it does save a little bit of time when you do this, but that's up to you. All right, so we have this nice straight piece now. We're gonna hit our UV shell. And this guy, we're gonna have to scale in and scale up a little bit to get this to fit where we want it. And so what we're gonna end up doing is we're gonna take this UV shell, move it up here. And this guy can go down here. And again, we're just gonna straighten, gonna do that. And then one thing we can do is we can take this, we can take our UV edge here. Just select all of our outlying. And this is kind of optional. You don't really necessarily need to do this, but it's something I like to do just to have straightened borders. I'll just drag them up, select the edges, and just kind of go from there. Sometimes the automated tools will do this for you. Other times they just kind of don't help all that much. But either way, I see this as a pretty quick and efficient way to fix this. We want just the UVs because it's going to mess us up if we don't. All right, cool. Scale that up. Then we'll just kind of scale it in, and then we're going to verify on our model that it looks proper. Okay, so if I smooth this guy, we look at it, everything's looking pretty good. We do have a little bit of jankiness up here, but I think that's just because we've scaled it so much that it's blurring a little bit. You could technically cut this into 2 pieces and get them larger. That way you can extend the amount of detail that you can get into the map, but as long as you're working with a higher resolution map, it's really not going to matter. And then some obvious things that we're noticing here in the back, we're getting some stretching because it's pulling these around. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to add 2 more supporting edge loops just to kind of give that a little bit less of a pull. And then we're going to look at our UV and see what we have going on here. Okay, so we're good there. Sweet. That's the base. So we finished modeling the base. We're going to go back, turn off the isolate selection. Make sure you save your scene. And then we're just going to kind of work our way up. So the next thing we're going to work on is this guy. We're going to go show, isolate, select. This thing is pretty interesting shape-wise. Just going to do a UV, camera-based UV. We've got this ugly, ugly piece here. So this piece presents kind of an interesting challenge on how we want to unfold it because we don't necessarily have a seam to hide behind. So what I'll do is I'm going to be pulling this back portion off. So we're going to go here, select, select, select. And that should have given us everything. Everything but that. All right, so we have our entire back face ready for cutting. So we'll do Shift X in the UV view. And then we're going to go UV, UV shell, select that guy, and we're going to pull it up and over. You will notice this one needs to be flipped, so let's go ahead and flip it. And now we have the rest of the model to work with. So the way I'm looking at this, I kind of want it to just unfold and flatten out entirely. And we can accomplish this by doing this. So we're going to go in here, we're going to select these edges. We're going to leave this one alone. We don't want that one. Select these guys, and then that guy's already technically cut, so we don't really need to worry too much about it. And then we'll do the same thing over on this side, and you'll see why we're doing this in a second. So we're going to select this guy, select that guy, boom, 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 and boom. Okay, so now that we've got both of those edges selected, I'm going to go back over in our UV view, Shift X to splice or to cut. And we'll take this, we'll go to modify and unfold. And if this worked the way we wanted it to, we have a nice piece that's unfolded and ready to go. So now that's considered done. Really, the only thing I'm going to do here is just kind of scale this a little bit because we don't really care about it. For now, we'll move it right here. When we go to lay out our UVs, we will do this a little bit differently, but you'll see once we get there. Okay, so that's 2 parts down. So you're starting to see now that UVing really isn't that bad. Like it can be a little time consuming, but it's not too bad. The only thing you'll notice here is you get a little bit of stretching on the back. With this model, that's not going to matter necessarily all that much, but we will come through here and do a little bit of work on that. Okay, so since we're making our way up, the next thing I'm going to do is one of these guys. This one's going to be a slightly more difficult model to UV. So we need to look at this and kind of plan how we want to do this. First we're going to do is we're going to go UV, camera based, get our UV set up. And then from here, what I want to do is select this edge loop, select this edge loop. I'm going to go Shift X, going to give us a brand new UV shell. I'm going to select that guy and just go ahead and move him over. And then we need to decide where we're going to cut that UV shell. I'm thinking honestly just right up here in the middle. It's going to be so hidden that you're really not going to notice it all that much. So we're just going to make sure we have everything selected that we need. And we're going to go Shift X. And then we're going to see what laying this out does. If I go to modify, unfold, unfold, that gives us a pretty clean result, and I'm actually really happy with that. So we're going to leave that as it is. We do have our little seam up there, but we're not too worried about it. I'm going to go to look at this next. So UV shell. So we've got our first shell right here, which is our kind of our front piece. And we're going to create a seam right here. You could technically try to unfold all of this, but to me, it doesn't seem like it's really worth it. So we're going to go there and then cut. And then UV shell. And then I'm going to drag that out. So this guy, we're going to select all the UVs, going to modify and then unfold. That's going to lay that out really nicely for us. We are going to take this portion and just scale it down a bit. Same thing here. Just lay this out and work kind of along the model. So now we have this back portion here. I'm thinking this entire chunk is just going to be one big shell. So we're going to select this interior part, go to cut sew and cut. And then we're going to select that shell, move it off, and we're going to punch it down by unfolding it. And that'll also do the flip automatically for us, so we don't really need to worry about it. I'm going to place this guy right about here. Okay, perfect. Okay, so now we have to think about this guy. This guy is our next UV shell that we have to worry about. Obviously, what we can do is we can do the back first. So let's just go ahead and take care of that now. Since it's the most accessible portion on our model, we're going to just go Shift X, UV shell, select that, and then drag it off. This is, again, a small detail we're not going to really see, so we're going to go there, UV, Tools, and modify, flip it. Okay, cool. So now all we got left is this guy. We could do this in a couple of different ways. But because we're looking at this and thinking, I'm never going to see this detail, I think the easiest way to go about this is going to be to do the same seam that we've had going. So we're going to select our seam. And I actually might just be able to go look at them. Yeah, so right here. If I select this guy, that should only select that seam on the model. Yep, and it does. So what we're going to do, we're going to go to cut sew and cut. And then from here, we're going to go UV shell. And modify, unfold. And that gives us, honestly, a pretty good result that doesn't need a whole lot of working with it. If we smooth the model now at this point, you can see that you do get that little bit of stretching. This is going to be in the rear of the model, so we're not going to really worry about it. Not going to see it all that much. And because it's such a hidden detail, we're not really super worried about it. But that handles the UV there. There are a couple of ways you could do this if you really wanted to. You could include all of this outside ribbing on the front of this UV plate. I don't really see it necessary to do so right now. But if that's something you want to do, go for it. All right, we're going to take this, move this in. I do want a little bit of detail there. Take this guy. I don't know why I'm selecting UVs. I could be just doing shell. All right, we'll pop that there. Pop that there. Pop that there. And the reason I'm not like perfectly scaling everything is because we're going to end up redoing this anyway. So I'm just kind of trying to get everything pre-laid out for me when I get to that point. Show isolate view selected. Okay, cool. So we're good there. That's all set. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take that UV, click this guy. I'm going to go to Windows. Or sorry. We're going to go to Mesh, Transfer Attributes. That should duplicate your attributes over, and if it's not doing it, you need to just look at your settings here. So mine's not doing it, so we're going to go Mesh, Transfer Attributes, Option Box. I'm going to change this to Local. We're just going to play with these until we get to what we want. And the interesting thing here is that's doing what it needs to. It's just not looking right. Okay, there we go. So do it off of topology if you're having that issue. Looks like that kind of corrected it for me. So we're looking good there. So we'll close that and we're just kind of moving along. So file, save scene. We're going to do these guys next. So show, isolate view selected. We're looking at this guy now. pretty simple. I'm gonna just go from here and do a UV camera based. Obviously this interior portion is going to be its own shell, so we'll do Shift X. The important thing with UVing is just making sure that you're actually going through and just taking your model apart for the most part. We are gonna hide the seam for this one right here. I think this will be the best kind of place to do that. Shift X, UV, modify, unfold. That gives us that nice unfold. And you can see how, like, as you get faster at this will become kind of second nature and you won't really have to stress too much about it. Okay, so now we have to decide what we want to do with this exterior stuff. My thought is to have it kind of unfold. So let me think about this. I think what I want to do is I'm going to select this loop here. And then I'm going to go... Is that selected or no? Yeah, that was selected. And then we're going to go and select this one right here. Same thing here. Same thing down here. Just make sure we have those. Okay. Good there. We're going to go Shift X. And what that should do is give us a pretty solid result on the unfold. Okay, so we're going to select this edge here. And we're going to select this interior one. We're just going to kind of go down the model here and remove this entire back face in order to give us the result that we're looking for. I think overall this is probably going to just work out better. And we'll select that edge loop. That goes around perfectly. And then we will go Shift X here. And then we'll select that shell. So we have this nice shell now that we can just pull off. And then we're going to flip it. Actually, we're going to unfold it first. And that should be all we have to do. And then we see we've got that nice piece. And then the last shell is this front one. So we'll go UV shell, select it. Make sure we've got kind of what we want. And then we're going to go UV shell. We're going to go to modify and unfold and see what result it gives us. Perfect. So it looks like a strange, like, alien hand thing. But what we've done is we've given ourselves a nice cut that is going to lend itself to actually being able to use or texture this really well. So we're just going to scale this guy in here and just put it in place. Cool. So now if we smooth that, looks pretty solid. We're not seeing too many issues. Cool. So show, isolate view selected. So there we have that. We're going to take that piece, go over here, shift select, mesh, transfer attributes. Should just do it, and it does. Okay. And then we're going to go file and save. At this point, you can kind of see what we're doing. So if you don't need to follow along anymore, that's totally up to you. There are still some more complicated shapes in here that we're going to work on. But if you want to go off on your own, by all means do it. Okay, so we've gotten the base pretty much handled. So we're good there. Next, I'm going to look at this center puck. This is going to be really easy. So we'll just do Shift I, UV, camera based. And we're going to just kind of come around back here. And I'm going to just cut this. We'll just do a Shift X. Take our two UV shells. And we're just going to unfold them. And that gives us two beautiful little UVs that we can just scale in here. And I do sometimes like to go through and correct the orientation, especially if it's like bothering me enough. So we'll just kind of come through here and straighten this out a bit, make sure that's lined up and nice. Because the last thing you want to do is have a model that has UVs pointing all over the place and you don't really know where anything's going or where anything's like pointing to. and we'll adjust that more in the end. But for now, I wanted this piece to look good. So there we go. That's good. Show, isolate, select. Okay. And we're just making our way on through this thing. Let's take a look. Since we're already in this general area, we're going to leave the grates for last, but I want to look at this fan blade. So we're going to do Shift-I. I'll save scene because I just haven't. So here's our ugly, ugly fan blade, which has a lot of different pieces, like design-wise to it. So we're going to do a camera-based UV, free, smooth, and we'll just call it there. We're just good there. We don't have to do anything with that. Just kidding. We are going to do this. Okay. So we're going to look at this as we're going to take this interior edge here. You want to find the edge that actually still runs along the model. And that's where you want to do your cutting. So we'll do Shift X. That gives us this nice UV. Oh, so it didn't. It didn't give us a nice UV shell. Or unless we didn't cut it properly. It may not have. Did we miss something? No, I think I just didn't cut it properly. Cut. Okay, so something's funky there. Oh, you know why? It's not giving us a shell because there's no interior ring that we cut off, because this is technically a different piece. So what we're going to do, we're going to add an edge loop on the inside of this. We're going to select that edge loop and we'll do Shift X, and then we'll go UV shell. That gives us the shell that we want. So go ahead and move this guy off. Oops. And then we're going to kind of work on this now, starting here. So we do have to decide how we kind of want this to separate. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this interior portion. We're going to cut this off. We'll do Shift X there, create a new UV shell. Take that guy out, and then we'll just do the same thing. We'll just select it all, and we'll go modify, unfold. This really just kind of comes down to you thinking about how you want to process these. And then I do want to see what happens if I just take this entire shell and then punch it. Let's see, unfold. You know what? The result's actually not bad. Hold on. A little skewed right here. I don't know how much I like that. What I can try to do is use the optimize tool. It might kind of help with a little bit of it. And you can generally use the optimize tool a couple of times, depending on how you want to do it. Don't use it too much because you actually may end up crashing Maya. But I think that's going to be okay for our use case, and then far away you can't even tell it's really stretching. So we'll call that good for that UV shell for the moment. If we run into issues later on, we'll go back and troubleshoot, but we should be okay. Okay, so where this starts to get a little confusing and complicated is when we get to these fan blades. So the question is how are we going to do these? You're going to unwrap these just like you would a box. So we're going to take the base of these blades. We're going to go just Shift X, and we're going to do every single one of them. So go around, select everything at the base of the blade, and then go into your UV editor, Shift X, and the same thing here. So the question's probably going to come up. Couldn't you delete your object and then go through and then just do one blade and call it good? You absolutely could. However, I tend to think that that causes a little bit more work than it's worth. So I'm just going to do the entire blade and call it good. But you are more than welcome to cut your object into quarters and just do one piece and then duplicate it across and figure out how to match all your UVs back up. But it's just not something I want to teach necessarily because it's not best practice. Okay, so looking at these, how do we want to do this? So let's pull one off. We're going to work on this guy. We're going to select this entire outer edge. Now, it's important to realize that you're going to have to make sure that you're actually selecting everything. because if you do this cut without properly merging your areas where you're doing the cut, you're going to run into issues. Okay, so we're good there. So we'll do Shift X. That should be giving us a brand new UV shell. We can just take that guy and modify. We're just going to flip it. We're going to just kind of rotate it. We'll put it up here. So these guys are going to be kind of large, but also not super large. And then the next thing we need to decide is, do we want to actually unfold this like a box? And I think the answer is going to be yes. So what we'll do is we'll go to this top corner right here where it points. We'll do this top corner. We'll do this corner right here. And then let's do this one. So we'll do Shift X, select this. We're going to go to Modify, Unfold. That should give us a nice, clean UV. And you can see where our cuts are. Just go in there and separate them just a little bit if they aren't. That way you can tell what's happening there. And we're good. Okay, so we have the blade. Perfect. All right, so we're going to take our next one. We're going to do kind of the same process here. And you're going to go through and just do that 4 times. It can be a little bit of a pain, but honestly, in the grand scheme of things, this really isn't that bad. Okay, so I'll select that, UV shell, pull this guy off. We'll do the same thing. Flip that. And then we're looking at the way we cut the original one. We did a cut right up here at the tip of the blade. Did a cut right over here. I think on that bottom edge, right? No, right on the top edge. Okay. And it's not hugely detrimental where you put these cuts. You just want to make sure you have it unfolding in a way that's going to make sense. So just do Shift X, UV, modify, and unfold. The biggest thing here is we're just going to try to make room for everything. And I want to follow kind of a standard of like how I'm laying these out. And then we should have enough room to do the other 2. Okay. Same thing. Go in here, select these guys, and select these guys. Shift X. Didn't really remove that, but it's okay. Shell. I usually try to work with just selecting the shells. It's just a little bit easier, but sometimes I forget. And it's okay to forget. Just make sure you're trying to do your workflow the way you want to. I just think selecting the shells is a lot easier. Just going to move those out of the way for right now. Okay. This guy, move it down here. And we're going to do the same thing. We're going to just cut that top edge, this top edge, that guy, and that guy. Shift X, UV shell, modify, and unfold. The more you do this too, the faster you're gonna get with it. It's just that's kind of the trade-off with UVs, right? Is like they suck, but the more you do them, the faster you're gonna get at them. And then again, make sure you're coming in here and just fixing any of these overlapping UVs. You don't want any of that. Your texturing software will give you an error especially if they're too close. Okay. And now we just have one blade left. So we're going to look at this guy, go UV, select shell. Just move it off because I didn't do that with the last one. Select these 2 points. These 2 points. Go in here, Shift X, UV, UV shell. Do this. Modify, flip. Scale it to about right. That's about where we were. These aren't all perfect, but not super worried about it right now at the moment. And then let's go ahead and just split these guys. So we'll go there, go here. No, actually it's this one. And right here. Shift X, UV, modify, and unfold. All right, cool. So we got that. That's all 4 blades done and separated. Remember, go in, UV, just kind of drag that guy out just to give that a little bit of a gap. Move that up. Okay, cool. So we're good there. Now the last piece, I believe, is this guy, which, what are we dealing with? It's just this kind of external piece. Honestly, I'm just gonna kind of go and cut this edge. We're gonna go Shift X, UV shell. Should give us a new shell so we can get rid of that guy. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take these shells here. We're gonna scale them down a little bit. We're just gonna make some room, because obviously our biggest detail points are gonna be the blades themselves. And then I'm gonna just cut this guy right here. So we'll do Shift X, UV, modify, unfold, and unfold is Control U. I haven't been using it, but you absolutely can. Put that right there. And then we're gonna look at the last shell here. I think I'm gonna do the same thing as I'm just gonna cut it. But I'm going to hide this one down here at the bottom. We're going to look over here on our UV. We're going to double select. The reason I do this is because it only selects the ones on the shell. And to me, that's just a faster way of doing it. Modify, unfold, or Control U. And we got that weird, funky looking piece right there that I'm not super worried about. Okay. So if we look at this now, we go smooth it. We look okay. We do have a seam here, and it's a pretty visible seam. I think what I want to do, we're going to go to Mesh Tools, Insert Edge Loop. We're just going to add a new edge loop here and here to kind of refine that seam and close it off a bit more. That way it's less visible. It'll look more like a defect in the metal than it will an actual like issue with the texture. We should be pretty good there. Everything else looks like it's doing okay. The fan blades look pretty solid. So we're gonna go Show, Isolate, Select. So that's it for the fan blades. Okay, so now we're gonna look at the back of the fan. Actually, you know what? Let's look at this piece on the inside real quick here. This one's pretty simple and straightforward. I'm not really hyper worried about it. We're just gonna go UV, camera based. Pretty easy there. We're gonna select this, go Shift X. We're gonna go here, go Shift X. I'm just gonna kind of run through this guy and cut it up real quick. Shift X. I don't really care about this piece. It's gonna be a piece of black plastic that doesn't have any like real view to it, so not hyper concerned about it. And then we'll just go UV shell. We'll just kind of pull this guy apart. Control U to flip it. Change the orientation a little bit. All right, we got this. What is this? That's that guy? Okay. Good there. There's no real detail there that we need to worry about. Nope. All right, and then let's look at this guy. So here's this guy, right? So we have this guy. We'll select that. We'll do Shift X. And actually just cut through everything, and I don't want to do that. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna go to UV shell, drag this guy out. Go to edge, select just that one, Shift X, go back to UV shell. It didn't work. Or did it? Yeah, it did. Okay, UV shell, and then Control U to unfold it. We're just doing a really easy piece here. We're not super hyper concerned with anything. And then the same thing with this guy. Go edge, select, Shift X, UV shell, Control U to unfold. We'll just kind of continue stacking these. It's a very simple shape, so we're not hyper concerned with it looking like incredible. All right, so that handles all that guy. This guy I would like to stretch in the other direction more, but kind of not going to be allotted the space to do that, but that's okay. You don't have to stress about it. There's this guy, UV shell. Oh, we didn't get this one cut properly. Looks like there was some missed stuff there. Okay, we'll do Shift X. Go ahead and just drag that off. Not really needing to worry about it. Select that guy. And this guy goes all the way down here. Okay, same thing. Shift X. Control U. This is our main little pole. And then what are you? You're the main kind of face. So what we want, I think that's the rear. We're gonna kind of hide that. We don't really need to worry about it because it's hidden. We're gonna move this guy here, move this here, move this here, and then we're gonna scale this guy and just plop it right in there. So that guy is set up and ready to go into a new UV. So we're good there. You can see that looks nice and clean. And if we smooth it, not too bad. Show, isolate, view selected. Okay, so we're going to save again. File, save scene. Okay, so now that we've finished that, we're going to go ahead and we're going to look at this rear piece right here. This should be pretty straightforward. We're going to go show, isolate, select. The reason I isolate, select is because it just kind of gets everything out of the way. It's a lot easier to work with. So we're going to go mesh tool, or sorry, we're going to go UV. I'm going to do another camera based. These don't have to be perfect. I don't really care if they're perfect. And then we're just going to cut them the way we want to cut them. So I kind of want to preserve this outside piece. So I think I'm just going to cut this way. So I'm going to select this outer ring here. Should be good there. We're going to go over here, Shift X. Separate that shell off. Just kind of make it smaller because it doesn't really, it's not going to be the most important part here. And we'll flip it. Flip. Okay, so now we've got this part. So we have this puck. The only issue is that this puck contains all of these little center pieces. So what we can do is we can kind of experiment with how we want to do this. But the reality is I do want them all cut out. So I'm going to select the internal components on these. In fact, what I'm going to do, let's go to our selection tools here. And we're going to do border. That border's not going to work. I'm going to do edge loop. Okay, so we'll select that edge loop, that guy. Make sure you're getting the right one. I didn't grab the right one there. This guy. This guy. This guy. Just go through your model, select all of these. We're going to basically turn these into their own little shells. And they're dark areas, so they don't really matter material-wise. So we can kind of have a crappy UV in there, and it's not going to be the end of the world. All right, so we're going to go Shift X. And then we're just going to select all of these shells. We're going to turn off our constraint here. Off. We're going to select every single one of these UV shells that we just created. And we're just going to move them off to the side here. That way we don't have to deal with them. Okay, so now that we've done that, we've got our other UV shell. I'm going to pull this guy over here, and then we're going to go to unfold it. That should be a pretty even unfold. It looks pretty good. We don't really have a lot of stretching going on, so I'm pretty happy with that. I'm going to take this shell. We're just going to kind of close it off or scale it down. And we're going to give it as much space as we can right there. All right, so now we got these guys. So what I want to do is see what happens when I just unfold it, because I don't really want to spend a gigantic amount of time on these. We just unfolded that. The real question is going to be what these look like when we smooth it, and as long as they're not really distorting all that much, I don't really care. We're not going to worry about them. They're not going to really, you're not going to see detail in them. So I think for the rest of these, we're just going to go through UV shell, Control U, just do Control U, Control U, and just go through and do these all. You can spend the time to figure out how you want to cut these and create themes if you want to, but for the purpose of this project, I don't think we're really worried about it. If we find that it's absolutely ruining the final result, we can go and look at it, but I don't think it's going to be a big deal. So I'm going to do another tool. I'm going to go here and go Layout, and then I'm just going to scale these down because it's just a cluster of them. We don't really care. They're kind of just going to highlight, just show a little bit of minor detail. So I'm going to move this guy here, just kind of move everything within this little frame. I like to give things enough spacing so that there's enough bleeding of the texture. And I think we're just about good there. Cool. All right, so that handles that. Move this guy over. That's how you UV that back puck. Show, isolate, view selected. We're looking at it smoothed already, so we're looking pretty solid there. All right, next thing. Power switch. Shift I to focus. This guy should be relatively straightforward. So we're going to do UV, camera based. All of this doesn't really matter. So the first thing we're going to do is just rip this back off. Shift X, UV shell, pull that guy off, and we're just going to unfold this real quickly. So we're going to go select these edge loops here. I'm going to have to manually select those just because of the way this is built. Boom, boom, boom. Select, select, select. Select. Bam. Okay, so we got those guys. We're going to do Shift X, UV, Control U. That's going to unfold that. You got a nice, pretty little box there. And we'll just scale this guy and put it up here because it's really size-wise not going to matter. We're not going to see it. When you're working with UVs, your biggest thing is the things that you're going to see, you want to actually have as big on the UV surface as possible. That way you can get as much texture detail in there. But anything like this stuff on the back, there's really no reason to do this or to keep them large. I'm going to take this shell off. Again, we're just kind of working with this and cutting it apart piece by piece. And this is a lot of the time where people will say UVing is relaxing, because all you're doing is really just pulling your models apart. To do this guy, we're going to go in here, right where this is. I'm going to select this edge loop right down here, this interior edge loop, if I can get to it. I think that gave me everything I wanted. It did. I'm going to go Shift X. I'm going to go up here to these corners now. Select your corners. And eventually this becomes kind of second nature. You look at a model and you go, okay, cool, I know that's how I need to unwrap it. So we got all of our corners separated, I think. Nope, we're missing one. Don't know why I thought that was selected. All right, so Shift X. Grab this piece here. Move it. And then I'm going to scale it down a bit. And then Control U. Oop. Control U. And you should have a nice even unwrap on that too. Or an unfold anyway. And then you want to make sure that you don't have anything stretching in here. It looks like we're okay. And then the rest of this is already kind of one piece. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go right here to this edge loop. And that kind of goes through there. So I want to look at the model here and see what I've selected. So I can see kind of what I grabbed here. And I'm just going to go through on the UV itself and shift select all of these to make sure that I'm getting all these edges. Because this is just really kind of a faster way of doing this. Problem is you're going to look at this and go, well, what the hell happened there? So try to select the best that you can. You can always sew this stuff back together, but I'm thinking that's where that needs to be. So we'll do Shift X, UV shell, Control U. We did it. We got it. Perfect. That's a nice looking split. This guy can be due to scale down a little bit, and then this guy, I want to keep it in that orientation. So I'm thinking what I might do. Let's just rearrange here. So with that, you got a nice UV on your power switch. Okay, so we'll show outside select, make sure you save. I save after every shell that I unwrap. To me, it just makes life a little bit easier. Okay, so now we got this guy. This thing, kind of a wonky shape, but we'll just UV camera based. And if at some point during this process, like I said, if you get lost, just leave me a comment, let me know. I'll do what I can to help you. I'm thinking the back of this guy. Is that what I wanted to select? Yeah, it is. Back of this guy is what I want to be working with here. So looks like we have everything selected that we needed. We're good. Go up here, Shift X, and then UV shell. It's important you grab the shell, because if you try to move directly after cutting one, you're actually grabbing just the edge loops or the verts that you're trying to cut. And because of that, you're going to drag your model all over the place. And that's not what you want to do. Sorry, my cable was all tangled up there. We're going to, nope. We're going to modify and flip. Just scale you down, because this is a very minor piece that doesn't really matter. Okay, so this is our new shell here. I think the next cut here, we're just going to do right along this outside edge, just because it's going to be the easiest way to kind of do this. Shift X, UV shell. So let's take this and decide where we want to cut this. Usually I will always cut them on the bottom. It's just a better way to hide your seams. So we'll go to cut, UV shell, Control U. That unfolds that guy. And we'll just kind of pop it right down here like that. I'm not super worried with the orientation of that. So what we'll do, sometimes this does work, you can go up to modify, straighten UVs. Give it a second, and that does pretty good. So we'll call that good right there. That looks all right. The only thing I'm seeing that I don't like, no, we're good. Because if I smooth this, we don't have any, oh, we do have some purple over here. Question is why? We have a little bit of overlap, it looks like. So looks like these two guys just kind of get separated a bit. So we'll try to just clean that up a bit. Did we do the same thing over here? Possibly we did. Okay. This is something you want to watch out for. You just want to make sure that you don't have any of this like pink hue. Just showing you that your UVs are technically overlapping. Sometimes it'll be pink, blue, purple, whatever colors. If you see any color that's not this like default blue, that's when you want to worry. All right, so we've got that. That's good. UV shell. It's a nice layout. It's clean. And we got to do this guy. So this one I'm looking at. What I want to do here is cut this shell out. So I'm going to go and just remove this guy. Well, let me think about this. Yeah, no, I want that cut. So I'm going to do Shift X, UV shell, UV shell. Oh, that's interesting. I think we must have missed something. Oh, we did. Okay. So because of the way this is built, we need to go in here and actually just cut this out too. Okay, Shift X. That should make that its own shell now. Shell, I'm gonna grab that guy, go here. And this is one of those things we can kind of do multiple ways. For ease of use here, I think I'm just gonna grab these corner edges and split them. That way we have kind of a clean, pretty clean UV, and then we're just gonna leave that there. That way we're not dealing with too much distortion. This piece I'm gonna cut off. Just because it is a little outcropping. So some of these areas you're not gonna be able to avoid the seams. It's really a matter of deciding what you're comfortable with having. And for something this small, I'm totally fine with having multiple seams. It's really not going to make a huge difference to the model itself. Just going to select these corner edges. If you find yourself wondering what you're looking at, you don't really know what you're selecting, just go back to your model, take a look there. Because those were hidden. You're not going to find those on the UV. So Shift X, UV shell, Control U. Beautiful. Keep that right side up. Move that down here. Okay, so the last piece of our shell is this guy. I think the best way to go about this is going to be to split across like this. So we're going to use this edge loop to our advantage. Because you could pancake this out, but the problem is you're going to deal with some skewing. You really don't want to have to deal with that. There are certain objects that I'm okay with dealing with on, but you would probably see that pretty evidently. And I don't want to have that. So I'm going to cut these. They'll have a little bit of a seam, but with these materials, it shouldn't really matter that we're going to be working with. Okay, so we're going to go Shift X, UV shell, Control U. Let's see what we deal with here. And all things considered, that could be a lot worse. We are getting a little bit of stretching right there, which I'm not a gigantic fan of. You know, let's do this a little bit differently. I think we're trying to push too much with that. So I'm going to take this exterior I'm going to slice that off. Shift X. I'm going to move this over. And the only thing I did was I just kind of Control Z'd out of the moving it. I can just come back through here and re-weld these. So if we go to Vertex or UV, just select those guys, go to Cut and Sew and Merge. And it'll sew those back together. And then just fix whatever overlaps you have here. You will have a little bit. Do the same thing. Just kind of drag these out and fix any of this weird coloration that you're getting. Sometimes you'll need to go through and just optimize. Really just depends on how your model's handling the unwrap. And this will be a little bit different because we're only in smooth preview, so you're going to get a lot more issues than you normally would. But it does help you kind of prepare your model. Okay, so we're good there. That piece is now separated. And that'll kind of add to this a little bit better than that. And now looking at this, what I want to do, I think, see, I want it like that. So let's look at this shell. So we hit this UV shell, we unfold it. How bad is that? So that's a little bit better, a little bit cleaner cuts on those seams. I'm more willing to accept that. I think we were just trying to pull a little bit too much data on the other one. Oh, my bad. Let's cut this too. Shift X. Shell. Control U. That's better. Okay. We're going to scale this guy. Move it here. Just kind of fill it in. Give it enough space. Overall, that UV is looking pretty good. So we're good there. So we'll go Show. Isolate Select. Again, File, Save Your Scene. Don't forget to save your scene. Okay, so the next little bit here that we're going to look at are probably going to be these screws. These ones shouldn't be too bad, but we only have to do one, thankfully. So isolate, view selected. We're going to look at our screw here. So this guy's all sorts of jacked up. Do UV, camera based, boom. So we've unlocked that portion. And so really what I want to do is maintain the outer face of this screw. So I'm going to take this back piece. I'm going to go Shift X. Select our shell. Move this off. We're going to work with this first. This part, not going to be too super difficult. We're just going to look. Let's see. Is that what? Yeah, that's what we want right there. So I'm going to cut the tip of this off first. Okay. Go up here, Shift X, UV shell. Take this guy, move it off, modify, flip it. And while we're at it, we're going to do the same thing to that. And then from here, we're just going to select this edge loop along the line, and we're going to cut it. Shift X, UV shell, Control U to unfold it. And we've got a nice little UV there. I'm not going to worry too much about straightening this out, so I'm not really worried about it. I'm just going to move this down here because it really doesn't matter. We're not going to see this. The big thing we're going to focus on is the screw head itself. So what we want to do is we want to take the interior of the screw. This is going to be where our seam is. Yeah, so just change it to edge loop. Grab this lower one. And then we're going to cut that there. Shift X. Pull this guy off. And then we're going to split this in a way to where it unfolds and looks semi-decent. So we're going to take these edge loops here. These corners. And do Shift X. We're going to see what this does when we unfold it. Control U. And it looks kind of terrible. So let's not do that. So other thing we may want to look at is doing these ones too. So we're going to do these. And this is going to create a lot of seams, but because it's a metal material, you're not going to notice them. Control C, or Shift X, shell and Control U. That's a little bit better. It looks cleaner. It looks terrible on the inside, but once we smooth it, it looks all right. And again, this is such a minor detail. We're not super stressed about it. You can go through here and refine this if you want to. I'm not going to worry too much about it because in the end, it's a tiny screw. And this all comes down to personal preference, like how much time you want to actually spend on one of these. But because of their smaller details, we're just not going to spend much time on this tutorial. So when you have something like this that's not working the way you want it to, you can go select faces. So we're going to select that entire grouping of faces. We're going to go to UV, planar, and we're going to go planar in the Z direction. Apply. And give us a nice, clean, laid out UV. And then we're going to flip this. And then from there, if we look at this, we should have a pretty good idea of what we got going on. The only thing is we've got this like kind of stretching going on here. So we're going to select these UVs. Since this is the outermost edge, we can't really just like multi-select them. So we're going to go through, grab all these guys. And you're going to notice it's grabbing them on another piece right now. We're going to fix that. But this edge is important because we want to be able to pull this out first. So then we can just match everything else to it. All right, so we've got our whole edge selected. Deselect all of this junk. We don't need it. And then just scale that out so we have enough space there. And then you can go edge and just scale out or scale in depending on what you need to do. Most of these, it's probably going to be scaling in or out. And then we'll take this one and just give ourselves a little bit more of a gap here. All right, cool. All right, and there we have it. We have a nice UV'd screw. And the cool thing is show, isolate, select. Now that we have this, we can just take this, shift select any of our other screws and go mesh, transfer attributes, and just make sure that they transferred properly. They did. And so you know what I'm seeing here? We didn't clean up this screw when we smoothed it. So let's go ahead and do that real quick. I'm gonna grab these UVs. Pull them in a bit. Scale them in. And then just kind of work these in here. We want to make sure that this is as clean as possible. We don't want to be dealing with any of this weird extrusion that we're getting here. Because when you do throw this into something like Substance Painter, you're going to get errors. So going through and cleaning it up is going to be the best way to do this. It's a little bit of a slower process. But the reality is you're getting so fast at UVs at this point that it's not going to matter all that much. And you'll find that when you do this, your end result on both sides is going to look pretty similar. Because they all have the orientation that they want to fall in. So they don't get too jacked up. Okay. That's pretty good there. We don't have any mess ups over here. And then the last thing we want to do is actually just kind of get this shelled over. Okay, so now what we can do is we can go and transfer our attributes to them. So mesh, transfer attribute, same thing. We're just going to go through the model and do the same thing. And just make sure that when you're transferring that you're seeing the same correct UVs, as you want to make sure that you're retaining everything. G. And then we're going to take this guy and we're going to go G. And then vice versa. We're going to go boom. And then boom. That's how you UV your screws. Now, the thing I'm noticing here, I like to, as I'm going through my model, smooth things. You don't have to, but it does kind of makes me feel good. Makes me feel like everything's flowing right. If your computer can't handle it, by all means, don't do it. All right, so pretty good. We've gotten all of that done. Next thing we're going to look at here is our power cable. Show isolate view selected. This guy, honestly, we're going to do pretty simple. What I want to do is delete these faces here. And then I'm going to do the same thing down here because we don't care that this isn't a solid object. It's so hidden, it doesn't really matter. UV, camera based. This is really just a formality here. Okay, so what we're going to do, same thing. I'm going to select that center edge loop all the way through. Come up here, Shift X. UV shell. We should only have one UV shell. And we're going to go to Control U. Unfold it. And we've got this weird pinching here that I'm not a huge fan of. Modify, optimize. There we go. That's a little bit better of a result. Honestly, there's going to be no real simple way to do this, but if you get a good enough result off of this, that's all that matters. The cable is going to be a solid material object, so the UV doesn't matter all that much. And it looks like we're pretty good there. So show, isolate, selected. So we're good there. That handles the cable. The plug is going to be one of those that, because we built it so weird, unless you went through and built it properly, which I did not do, and I will fully admit in the last tutorial because I got lazy with it, plug is going to be a little bit funky. So we're going to go UV, camera based. We've got our plug laid out. Looks terrible. So we're going to separate the prongs because those are separate materials. We're going to get the prongs cut off first. Go Shift X to cut that guy off. Same thing, Shift X, that gives us those two UV shells. Let's separate those from the plug. Let's get these unwrapped. So easiest way is probably going to be just a standard like box unfold like you'd normally do. So we're going to select that corner. We're actually just going to go here and look at the UV. Select that corner, that one, this one, and this one. And then from there, we will Shift X. And then because this has a hole in it, we do need to actually separate that too. So we're going to select that, Shift X. I think we're looking at this one right now. Yeah. We're actually looking at the wrong plug. That's okay. Same thing. Shift X. Okay, so UV shell, we're going to pull these both out. Just pop those out. And then we're going to give them a nice cut down the middle, right in the back. So we'll take these now. We shall Control U. Control U. Ooh, Control Z. Don't do that. Make sure that when you've done this, that you've changed back to the Unfold 3D. Otherwise, you're going to get some weird results. UV shell, modify, unfold. Okay, so there we go. We have our little internal holes for the power plugs, which these guys will just kind of take up here and rotate them in a manner that looks acceptable. Okay, so same thing here. We're going to do Control U. Edge, 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 and where do you go? Edge and edge. Shift X. Shell. Control U. That's much better. Okay, that's what we were looking for. This weird prong looking thing. Okay. That's good. Edge. We're going to select that guy, this guy, that guy, and this guy. And then just continue those through to the top. Can be kind of hard to see these, so just make sure you're grabbing the things. We'll do Control or Shift X. Should give us what we're looking for. It looks like it. UV shell. Control U. Ooh, almost, except we cut something off important. What did we do? Oh, I see. Somehow we selected. Oh, wow. Okay, so I see the problem here. We cut the wrong edge. Okay. Shift X, UV shell, Control U. There we go. We have our other plug. And we're just going to scale that guy down. Doesn't really matter on sizing. All right, so the next thing we want to look at is the rest of the plug's body. We can kind of do this a couple of ways. And my thought is just to have a seam down all corners of this object. Because again, it doesn't really matter all that much. So I think that's what we're going to do. We're going to cut this seam. Shift X. That should give us a new UV shell, which is this guy. And then we're going to cut this outside edge. Shift X. So go to UV shell. Oop. Oh. Shift X. UV shell. We'll take this guy and modify, unfold. And just scale him up. So we're basically just going to go through and deconstruct this plug a little bit. So that takes care of that. We've got this UV shell here, which we want to pull out. And then I think what I'm going to do here is just the same kind of standard corner cut. Just going to go in here, grab these corners, since they don't have any crazy support going through them. I'll go Shift X. Object mode, UV, UV shell, and then modify, unfold. Gives us a nice square unfold. Put that right up there. Okay, we're getting there. So this centerpiece, this is going to be the next thing that's going to give us a little bit of trouble. So the way I'm going to approach this is like the way I would approach a cylinder. I'm going to take this interior. Go up here and Shift X That gives us the new UV shell, which is going to be the entire body portion. And then from here, I'm going to look at this as the way this is focusing, or this is seen in the camera. So looking at this, the plug is visible here. So I want this side to hide my seam. So what I'm going to do is select this edge loop here, find it on my model, then select the entire edge loop. We're going to go Shift X, UV shell, Control U. That's going to unfold that piece for us. And then the last piece we have here is this really complex piece of geometry with all the things. This is where we kind of started messing up with the model. So I'm going to just divide this as best as I can. Just do a quick and dirty UV on it. Because again, this part to me does not really matter. Control U to flatten that guy out. And so now we got to decide what to do with this thing. So the nice thing about this thing is I think I do have a line that runs straight through the center. Kind of. But I can identify that line on here. Just kind of move along the mesh here. And figure out generally where that goes. And I can split it. And we can just do a kind of a gnarly little unfold on this, but it'll help us get the result that we're looking for. Where did I stop? Right there. All right, so if we look at that, we should be able to almost completely move that around. Yeah, so we've got that whole strip. So we're going to do Shift X. I'm going to take this UV shell. I'm going to do Control U. It's going to give us this really ugly result. However, when we smooth our model, if you look at it, once we kind of rotate this, it should look pretty good. Just come in here and correct some of these. You'll notice you have a couple of UVs that are just kind of stretching everything. Just grab them, pull them in a little bit. We're not super worried about this looking fantastic. You just want to find any errors that you may have in the mesh or the UV and just clean them up. Same thing up here. It doesn't look like we have anything going on there. So with that, the cable's pretty much UV'd. It's looking pretty solid. And again, if we run into any issues, we can come back in and just kind of clean that up if we need to with the prongs. I don't think we'll need to though. So I'm gonna save my scene. And then the last thing we have are our fan grates and this handle. We can do the handle real quick. So the way I would normally approach these, just kind of allow them to exist as they were. They were just toruses. So if you look at the standard UV on a torus, we pop this guy open. It's a straight up box. So it's cut down the middle and it's cut around the edge. So we can delete that. And what we're going to do is we're going to go to Mesh, Separate. And the same thing here. So I'm going to look at the handle first. All right, select your object, UV, camera base. It gives us a nice baseline to start with. We're going to go down here. Control X, Shift X. And Control U. Same thing on this side. Shift X. UV shell. Control U. Okay, so we've got that going. And then the last thing we need to do is figure out how we want to split this. I'm going to split this from the front. So we're going to go just like that right across, Shift X. And we're going to go UV shell and Control U. That should unfold, give us a really nice result. And then we're just going to kind of pile this down here. These don't really matter all that much because they're going to be like a metal material. So just going to kind of stack these the best way we can. Nicely view selected, but there we go. That handle's done. 3. Okay, so the next thing we need to look at are these toruses. Toruses themselves need some sort of UV because right now they're just a stretched out mess. So I'm gonna look at this one. I'm gonna go UV, camera based, show isolate view selected. So the easiest way to do this is we're gonna create a seam at the bottom. We're going to cut that seam, and then we're going to select one of these outer edges. I'm going to do Shift X. So from here now, if I go UV shell, select this guy and do Control U, it's going to unfold into the shape that we want. We're going to kind of compress it a little bit because that's what we have to do to fit it on the plane. And then we're just going to drop it right there. Now, if we go into our viewport, you can see a clear difference between how the mapping looks on this one versus like these ones. What else we're going to do is we're going to take this guy and we're going to see if we can actually just mirror this across. In all theory, we can. We just have to find the right configuration. So instead of topology, let's do UV. We know UV doesn't work, so we can do local. Local doesn't seem to work. We can do world. World is also not working. Actually, wait a minute. That one might have worked. No, that one didn't work. We can do component. Component seems to be where we want to be. So we'll use component to transfer this to the individual ones. That way we don't have to keep redoing them. And we'll just kind of apply this and make sure that they're all doing what we need them to do. And you can see kind of in general how that's now lining up with everything. Everything has its own UV now, and we're good to go. So close that. All right, so the last thing we got to work on here are these guys. We're going to go show, isolate, view selected. So these are, again, just quadded off little guys. I'm going to go UV, camera based, and we're going to select our edge loops. I'm going to go Shift X. Same thing here. Shift X. UV shell. We're going to select our shells. Move them off. Control U. And Control U. I'll just put those two together. We want these to be as simple as possible. We don't want to stress about them. And then since this guy kind of sits like that, I'm going to cut the back open. Shift X, U, UV shell, and Control U. This one we're going to leave in an upwards position. We want it to kind of mirror the way the UV map itself folds, and we'll put these guys right up here on the top because they don't really matter. Okay, cool. Show, isolate, view selected. Okay. I'm going to take this. We're going to go mesh, transfer attributes. Just make sure that's doing what it needs to. Seems like it is. So our UV's looking good there. We'll just go across and do the same thing to all of them. Because again, these are all the same pieces. You can see though that we're getting some weird stretching there. So we might have to change the way we're applying that. So if we go here, mesh, transfer attributes, might need to select topology to get that one to work. Sometimes depending on the orientation of your object, if it's changed, you might just have to change it. Okay. So we're good there. Everything's nice and clean. I'm going to go back here. Apply. G. G. And G. And G. And G. Okay, cool. All right. Looking at this now, we can take these guys and just apply that. That's not going to work because we changed that. We need to go to mesh, transfer attributes, change this back to component. Looks like it's okay. It is. We can just scale this down since this was the same. Okay, cool. All right, so now we can smooth our entire model. Close this. You can see we have quite the mess up here, but that's okay. Looking at your model in your viewport, you should see a very clean, laid out UV system all the way from the cable to the plug. I don't think we've missed anything. We'll take one last look over on this guy. I don't think everything seems fine to me. So that's it. Don't forget at this point to save your model, back it up. We're done. We're UV'd, we're ready to go. Like I said, next week, you're gonna get 2 videos. You're gonna get a video on how to set up the materials in Maya, and you're gonna get a video on how to set up the materials in Substance Painter. I'm doing both because I wanna make sure that people who don't have access to Substance Painter can still use it. If you'd like to, you can download a trial for Substance Painter. Just don't do that until you are at the point in the tutorial where the video is out and you can move from Substance back to Maya before that expires. But with that said, thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you all in the next tutorial.